If you're running a real business with payroll, clients, deadlines, and actual responsibility, and someone tells you that you need to become a creator to make YouTube work, this is where the friction starts, because you don't want to become a creator. You want predictable growth, you want qualified leads, you want leverage. And most of what you see on YouTube looks like a second full-time job. Here's the truth. Trying to use YouTube like a creator is exactly why it feels unsustainable for business owners. And if you don't separate those two models, you'll either never start or you'll start and quietly resent it and probably eventually quit. There's a deeper misunderstanding underneath this. You think YouTube requires creative energy. What it actually requires is strategic clarity. Let's expand the tension. You're already busy. Your calendar is full. You've built something real. You don't have time to study thumbnails for hours. You don't want to chase trends. You're not interested in algorithm games. And the advice online sounds kind of like this. Post 3 times a week, or optimize your hook, or study retention curves, test formats. And that advice does make sense for people whose business is content. But your business isn't content. Your business is service delivery, revenue, outcomes. So when YouTube is framed as a creative discipline, it feels like mission drift. Here's the second question hiding under the first. What if YouTube isn't a content strategy at all? What if it's a sales infrastructure decision? Because those are very different commitments. Let's look at what most busy business owners try. They dabble, they post inconsistently, they record a few videos when they have time. They treat it like marketing hygiene, something to check off. And it feels productive. It looks proactive even. And it should compound, except it doesn't, because dabbling doesn't create momentum. And YouTube does not reward casual effort. This is where things break down. When you approach YouTube like a creator, you measure output. When you approach it like a business owner, you measure leverage. Creators ask, how do I grow this channel? But business owners should ask, how do I reduce friction in my sales process? And those are not the same objective. And if you mix them, you burn time without building assets. Now, don't assume the fix is obvious. Just listen to this. The solution is not to work harder at YouTube. The solution is to redefine its role. Creators monetize attention. Business owners monetize trust. Creators need scale. Business owners need precision, and that distinction changes everything. If your goal is to become a creator, you need volume. If your goal is to use YouTube as a lead engine, you need depth. You don't need daily uploads. You need strategically positioned conversations. You don't need trends. You need clarity around what your buyers are already wrestling with. And this is where most busy owners miscalculate. They think, I don't have time to be a YouTuber. Correct, but you don't need to be. You need to document structured thinking, and that's a very different workload. Most people miss this. You're already having the conversations that should become your videos. Client calls, strategy sessions, objection handling, industry clarifications. The friction your prospects feel before they hire you. That material already exists. When business owners say they don't have time for YouTube, what they usually mean is, I don't have time to invent content. You shouldn't be inventing anything. You should be extracting. This is where things quietly shift from creative effort to operational leverage. So instead of asking, what should I post? Ask, what do I repeatedly explain in sales conversations? And that question produces content that drives revenue, not just views. Let's go deeper. Why does the creator identity feel so heavy? Because creators are measured by performance, views, subscribers, engagement. Business owners should be measured by conversion. Are the right people arriving more prepared? Are sales calls shorter? Is trust built before the first conversation? If your YouTube channel reduces explanation time in your pipeline, it's working, even if it's not viral. This is the reframe. You're not building an audience. You are building pre-sold prospects. And pre-sold prospects change everything. They require less convincing. They challenge you less defensively. They reference your thinking before you mention it. That's not content creation. That's sales compression. Now let's talk about what happens if you don't adopt this perspective. If you continue viewing YouTube as a creative side project, it will always sit at the bottom of your priority list. Client work will come first, operations will come first, hiring will come first, and YouTube will be something you get to later. Later rarely comes. On the other hand, if you see YouTube as infrastructure, like hiring a salesperson that works 24/7, well, then the priority changes because infrastructure decisions get scheduled, they get resourced, they get systemized. This is where mature businesses win, not by doing more, by structuring differently. And here's the deeper realization. Busy business owners don't need to become creators. They need to become clarifiers. You don't need energy, you need articulation. You don't need personality, you need positioning. You don't need frequency, you need relevance. A single, well-positioned, long-form video that answers a high-stakes buyer question can outperform months of random posting because it sits in search. It builds trust on demand. It pre-handles objections. It compounds. And that compounding effect is what busy owners are actually looking for. Leverage over their time, not attention in the moment. Let's land the core insight. The reason YouTube feels overwhelming is because you're trying to adopt someone else's model, the creator model. But you don't need that model. You need a decision-based model. Create videos that move prospects towards clarity. Structure them around real friction points in your sales cycle. Publish consistently enough to build a body of work, and then let the library do its job. This is slower than chasing trends, but it's stronger, because it builds authority instead of visibility. And authority is what established businesses monetize. Now, imagine two futures. In the first, you stay busy but reactive. You rely on referrals, you rely on outbound, you rely on constant networking. Growth depends on continued effort. In the second, you invest a few structured hours each week documenting your thinking on camera. And over time, your channel becomes a filter, a qualifier, an authority signal. Prospects arrive having already consumed hours of your perspective. Sales calls shift from persuasion to alignment. Which version creates more breathing room? Which version compounds? That's the real decision. Not whether you want to be a creator, whether you want scalable trust. So the grounded takeaway is this. YouTube is not a hobby for business owners. It's an asset class. Treated casually, it does drain energy, but treated strategically, it builds leverage. You don't need to film daily. You don't need to entertain. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You just need to show up consistently enough for your buyers to observe how you think. That's it. That's what builds trust at scale. And trust, when accumulated consistently, turns into predictable sales. If you're serious about using YouTube as infrastructure instead of performance art, there's a link below in the description box where you can request a conversation. No pressure, just a discussion about whether your existing sales conversations could be converted into a long-term lead engine. And if nothing else, ask yourself this. Are you avoiding YouTube because you don't want to be a creator or because you haven't yet seen it as infrastructure? That distinction determines whether it feels heavy or strategic.